Hare Krishna. Namaste. Chapter 5, entitled as Karma Sannyasa Yogam. Sloka 17. Tad-buddhayas tad-ātmānas tan-niṣṭhās tat-parāyaṇāḥ gacchanty apunar-āvṛttiṁ jñāna-nirdhūta-kalmaṣāḥ. Now that we have learned that attaining the self is greater, now in this sloka we will learn the steps to attain the self. Tad, to attain direct vision of the self or supreme. This term tad has been interpreted as self by some and as supreme by some. We will see the difference as we go. Buddhayas, firmly determined. Tad-buddhayas, those whose intelligence is always in supreme. Tad-ātmānas, have their mind concentrated on it. Tad-niṣṭhās, keep thinking exclusively about it, completely fixed. Tat-parāyaṇāḥ, have it as their entire goal. Jnana, by knowledge. Nirdhūta, cleansed. Kalmaṣāḥ, misgivings. Jñāna-nirdhūta-kalmaṣāḥ means those who have their sin removed by that knowledge. Apunar-āvṛttiṁ, to liberation. Gacchanty, go or attain. Translation: when one's intelligence, mind, faith and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation. This verse deals with the act of climbing up the ladder of knowledge to reach the upper floor of experiencing the self or Paramatma. This sloka has its flavor by different acharyas. Swami Ramanujacharya and Sripad Shankaracharya interpreted this verse in turns to attain the Atma, and the reason is because the context of this sloka falls within the first 6th chapter, which is all about attaining Atma. Whereas Madhvacharya, Baladeva, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, they have interpreted this as attaining the Supreme. The reason is just because the Atma Jnana is not enough. One requires the grace of the Supreme Lord to attain moksha, which is fully true in that sense. It is a similar thing that we saw in the 15th sloka of the same chapter, where Vibhuhu, which is interpreted by some acharyas as Paramatma, whereas as Atma, Jivatma by others. These differences will exist when we do a comparative study of Gita, but they are not major concern of distraction or deviation to the actual message of Krishna compared to some drastic philosophical changes like the one we saw in the previous sloka about Atma. So we have to take the messages in a proper sense as we go through a study of Bhagavad Gita. Those who place their intelligence in the Supreme Lord, who are dedicated to contemplation of the Lord using their intellect, tad-buddhayas, who are meditating on the Lord using mind, tad-ātmānas, who becomes completely fixed only in the Lord, tan-niṣṭhās, by the process of hearing and chanting about the Lord, tat-parāyaṇāḥ, these persons do not attain birth again. The sequence that's been provided here is, number 1, one's intelligence first become convinced of Lord's qualities. Once you know the Lord's qualities, various qualities. Number 2, then their mind becomes absorbed in those qualities of the Supreme Lord. Number 3, then Paramatma becomes their only goal, not anything else. And number 4, when Paramatma becomes the goal, then the last point is they completely surrender to Paramatma. In this way, they become cleansed of all misconceptions by the knowledge of the Lord's good qualities. Thus, having destroyed all aversion to the Lord, that person attains liberation. Apunar-āvṛttiṁ. If we have to take the sloka from the viewpoint of Atma realization, then the sequence goes like this. Number 1, firm desire to have the vision of Atma, self. Number 2, focusing the mind entirely on it as a means to attain the vision of Atma. Number 3, often analyzing the defects of the mundane objects and merits in attaining the self. In this way, keeping the mind interested only in this goal. Meaning, there's a third point, meaning that one has to contemplate on the defects of material enjoyments, material objects, material things, rather than trying to see how great they are. We have to see the defects in them. On the other hand, we also have to start meditating on understanding the merits of attaining the self. What's going to be the long-term benefit by attaining the Atma, self. And by doing so, the mind is brought back to the focus of Atma. Number 4, thinking this way, the drawbacks of material interest and virtues in attaining the self becomes increasingly clear, relinquishing other interests and developing the conviction that the self is the highest goal to be reached. So that's the 4th point. Tad-buddhayas, one who is fixed in self-vision, Atma-darshana. Atma-darshana means having Sama-darshana. Sama-darshana means seeing everyone equal as Atma and seeing all Atma as part and parcel of Paramatma, not seeing the body which has only differences. This Sama-darshana leads to Atma Sakshatkara, meaning vision of self. That is tad-buddhayas. Tad-ātmānas. Here Atma means not the Jivatma, here it means mind, manas, which means one who is completely involved in this by all their efforts. Tad-ātmānas. Tan-niṣṭhās, by practice, by fixed practice. The above two that been mentioned, which is tad-buddhayas, tad-ātmānas, are two things, which is determination, intelligence, and fixing the mind. But the third point is very important, that is practice. To attain those results, one cannot simply be satisfied with having determination, but one has to have practice. It's like a student has a determination to join a particular university. That is tad-buddhayas. And his mind is fixed on that to attain that particular university. That is tad-ātmānas. Now, just by having these two things, he is not going to join the university that he decide for. The third factor is very important. Tan-niṣṭhās. Taking steps to materialize those determination and thoughts by action. One has to start practicing. Any effort will only get fruitified if practice is involved. And the practice should not be one-time practice. It has to be repeated multiple times. Just by doing something for few times, few days, one cannot expect the result, the ultimate result. The practice should continue repeatedly for several times, several days. For some, it might be several years. Whether it is chanting, mantras, reading the scriptures, listening to the lectures, doing pujas, or anything for that matter, it has to be repeated continuously. Sometimes we may have to hear certain slokas multiple times to make it clear for us. Even if we take the same with material studies, if one wants to become a good singer, he has to practice repeatedly several times, whether it's a dance, martial arts, anything for that matter. Even in academic education, we see children learning in Kuman, for example. They have this practice of repetition. That's all the technique is. They put permutation and combination of the numbers or alphabet or words in different ways. So the impression of these words, these numbers gets stored. And the children doesn't have to memorize anything. So the repetition is an easy way or the secret for one's success in any field of life. And that has been proven also. Chanting 108 times Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare is a practice. By this, our tongue, mind, intelligence, the determinations all get trained and fully soaked, absorbed in the chanting the name of God. Even when one stops chanting, one will come to a point where the tongue starts vibrating while the mind chants. So that is how the repetition helps one to become fully absorbed in the activities that they are doing. tat-parāyaṇāḥ, one who understands and realizes that this is the only useful thing to achieve in life other than anything else that simply waste of one's life. tat-parāyaṇāḥ, jñāna-nirdhūta-kalmaṣāḥ, one therefore removes all the misgivings, all the karma with the knowledge. Gacchanty apunar-āvṛttiṁ, and attains the state where he doesn't need to return back into this material world for any more suffering, because all the karmas are gone. There's no need for one to come back again into this world. For those who are in the Atma program, the state of pure self in its own essential nature, from which there is no return. That pure self in its essential nature is termed as apunar-āvṛttiṁ. And for those who are in the Paramatma program, will attain the Supreme Lord and doesn't need to return. And for them, that's the meaning for apunar-āvṛttiṁ. To summarize, one whose mind, intelligence, faith, and refuge are always in Krishna, or in other words, one who is fully in Krishna consciousness, is undoubtedly washed clean of all misgivings and is in perfect knowledge in everything concerning things that beyond the material realm. That is, those who are determined to have the vision of self or Paramatma have their mind entirely concentrated on it, or keenly engaged in practices for its attainment, considering it as the highest goal, have their sins, misgivings removed by knowledge and reach the state of self or Paramatma, wherefrom there is no return. tad-buddhayas tad-ātmānas, tan-niṣṭhās tat-parāyaṇāḥ, gacchanty apunar-āvṛttiṁ, jñāna-nirdhūta-kalmaṣāḥ. Namaste. Hare Krishna.